This morning, we're going to continue on in our series in Ecclesiastes, and this is our 8th week in this series. I know some of you are like, yeah, it feels like longer. But if you've been here for any part of it, you know that the book of Ecclesiastes, which is this book in the Old Testament, is really, really unusual. In fact, it's unlike just about any other book that we read in the Bible, but it also delivers a type of wisdom. It delivers a perspective on life that I actually think is incredibly relevant for today. Like, I think what Ecclesiastes is talking about, if there was ever a generation, I'm sure everybody needs to hear it, but if there was ever a generation that needed to hear the message of Ecclesiastes, I think it's this one right now. I think it's us that are living and breathing in this day and age that need to hear this. And so while it's different, I think it's also been really good, and it's helpful for us to see these things. Today, I just want to dive right in. I want to just jump into chapter 9. We're going to read it, and then I'm going to explain it after I get done reading it. And if you brought a Bible with you, you can open it up, a device, if you have the big leather-bound family Bible, whatever it is. And if you don't, no worries, because it will be on the screen. So here it is, Ecclesiastes chapter 9, fasten your seatbelts. So exciting and encouraging every single week. Here it is. So I reflected on all of this and concluded that the righteous and the wise, what they do are in God's hands, but no one knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good, so it is with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so it is with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil that of everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there's madness in their hearts while they live, and afterward they join the dead. Anyone who's among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward. And even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have part in anything that happens under the sun. So, verse 7, go and eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife whom you love all the days of this temporary, now we understand the word, temporary life that God has given you under the sun, all your temporary days. For this is your lot in life and your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you're going, there is neither working nor planning nor knowledge nor wisdom. And once again, we just say thank you for the inspiring, encouraging, joy-filled message of Ecclesiastes, right? Now, if you've been here for any part of this series, you read chapter 9 and you go, well, this sounds a lot like every other chapter that we've read, right? Sounds very similar. Doesn't it seem like, obviously the writer of Ecclesiastes did not take any sort of creative writing course, did he? Because like chapter after chapter, the plot is the same. It just seems to sort of ride along the same plane. We keep hearing the same thing, and it's very repetitive. In fact, for some of you, you're probably like, yeah, it's repetitive enough that I'm getting fatigued. And maybe you're like hopeful that this is going to be different today. Here's the bad news. It's not going to be. The message is the same over and over again. The good news is this is week 8 of number 9, so next week is our last week and it's over, right? So just there's relief on the horizon. But I mentioned the repetitive nature of this for a reason. In fact, yesterday I was on a bike ride with some friends, and while we're riding, one of the guys comes up alongside of me and he goes, hey, I thought I'd mention to you that I'm really enjoying this Ecclesiastes series. And I thought, well, I'm glad someone is. And then he goes, the thing is, I forget so easily how important the moments are. And I said, man, that's it. I said, that's actually what I'm starting with tomorrow. The wisdom of the teacher brings him to this place of being repetitive. The repetitiveness is not meant to be annoying. He does this, and in doing so, he's revealing a fundamental dysfunction in humanity, and that is that we forget. We are forgetful. Some of us are more forgetful than others, right? But we all forget, and we forget a particular kind of category of things. We have this ability to forget the things that really matter, and yet we have this other weird tendency to remember the things that don't matter, right? We can start with like a list of really simple things like music, like songs. I don't know how it is possible, but there are songs I listened to in junior high and high school that when they come on the radio, I know every single lyric to this day, right? Like there are some Beastie Boys songs I know every single lyric to. Just go to karaoke with me and you'll find out. And I'm just like, why? Why do I remember that, but I can't remember like important verses in the Bible? Why is it that I know Beastie Boys and not the Bible? I don't understand this. Like, why does that stick like glue? Or lines in movies. Why is it possible that I can quote Nacho Libre and Napoleon Dynamite for days, right? Like something about Jack Black just burns on your memory and you can quote him forever. But ask me to find a story in the Bible, I'm like, oh, just let me pretend to be the Bible guy for a minute. I'm like, where is that, you know? How does this happen, right? It goes even beyond that. I think also we tend to forget, or we tend to remember things in a whole other category. Remember all the bad stuff, right? Anytime somebody hurts us, anytime somebody wounds us, anytime somebody insults us, isn't it amazing how those words stick? Those have like sticking power. Like I know for me, I could have 10 people write me a note and say, man, thank you for what you do, whatever it is. All it takes is one snarky email. And guess what I go to bed thinking about that day? Right? I forget all the good stuff and I remember the bad stuff, right? So we have this tendency, we tend to think about this. And this happens in lots of different categories where what we tend to think about and dwell on and remember is the exact opposite of what we should. And so the writer of Ecclesiastes, what he's trying to do, the reason he's so repetitive is he understands we have this tendency to forget. And so we need to be reminded. Now, before some of you like start beating yourself up and you're like, you're right, I feel horrible. Why do I always forget? And you start feeling like, you know what, I missed this moment. You feel guilt or shame about some past moment. Let me just tell you, stop that. Because being guilty about being forgetful of what's important is about the equivalent of being frustrated with yourself for being hungry today when you ate last week. Right? I mean, biologically, you never go, man, I can't believe I'm hungry this week because I ate last week. No, you're going to have to eat again. In the same way, you're going to have to be reminded again because that is a part of our neurology. That's a part of our biology. And so we need these constant reminders. So with that, we come to chapter 9. And here's what's really interesting. There's one verse in chapter 9 that actually seems to contradict something that we looked at last week. So if you were here last week, you know we were in chapter 7. And in chapter 7, the writer of Ecclesiastes says that it's better to be in a house of mourning than it is to be in a house of feasting. He goes on to say that the day of your death is better than the day of your birth. And so if you weren't here last week and you want to know how he made sense of that, you can go back and listen. But that seems to be a contradiction to what we read in verse 4 of chapter 9. Because here he says this, anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. So then you start asking yourself the question, well, which one is it? Is it better to be dead or alive? Is your day of birth better than your day of death, or your death better than your day of birth? Feasting or mourning, which one is it going to be, right? Remember, this is a master teacher. Remember, his wisdom is a different level of wisdom. And is it possible that he's really taking another angle and helping us to understand a similar truth, but in a different sort of way? Let's just look at this again. Verse 4 is really fascinating. Verse 4, he says, anyone who is among the living has hope. And if you're just taking note of one word here, I want you just to hold on to hope because this is a very rare occurrence. I know some of you go, well, I thought hope was a biblical concept. I thought that was this Jesus thing, right? It is. In fact, the word hope appears hundreds of times in the New Testament, but the word hope only appears in the Old Testament 3 times. This word that's being translated hope, only 3 times does it ever show up in the Old Testament, and it's the Hebrew word bitahon. Say that one with me. Say bitahon. Bitahon. That means that's being translated hope. There's this bitahon. The living have bitahon. Here's what's also really interesting. The other 2 places where this word is used, it's used in the exact same passage. So really what we only have are 2 usages of the Hebrew word bitahon. And this word bitahon in the other place is not translated with the word hope. It's translated with a word that we never associate with hope. It's translated certainty. There's a certainty. This word bitahon is like hope, but it's a hope that has certainty. And this is why I think this is really interesting, because most of us in our culture, we never associate certainty with the word hope, do we? Like when we talk about hope in our culture, usually what we're trying to describe, we're looking at some future event and we're acknowledging our lack of control over those events, but what we're anticipating is a favorable outcome, right? I know I don't have control, but I really want things to be favorable towards me, and we're anticipating that. We also call that wishing, right? So in our culture, hoping is more like wishing. When we say, I hope it's sunny tomorrow, well, we're wishing it's sunny tomorrow. We don't, right? We have no guarantee of that. We say hope. We say things like, I hope I have enough money to pay the bills. Sometimes I don't know if I'm going to have enough, right? I don't know what's going to happen, right? We say things like, I hope my kids get college scholarships. At least I say things like that. And it turns out I got no control over that, right? They do, I don't. So you use this word hope. If your spouse comes to you and they say, I hope that I love you in 5 years, that's not very encouraging, right? Unless you're Hebrew. Because if your spouse says, I bitachon, that I love you in 5 years, there's a certainty. So this idea of hope is really this idea, like there's a sense of living in this moment with a knowledge of something that is influencing you in a unique way. And so the true living have this hope. What is their hope? What is their certainty? Well, the true living are aware, and this isn't going to be very profound, they're just aware that they're alive. That's what he gets to in this. Because right after this, he says it's better to be a live dog than a dead lion. The certainty is the sense that I'm alive. Now, we kind of lose this because the metaphor is lost on us in our culture because we don't see things the same way they do in this culture. First, like lions, let's just for a second look at this picture of a lion. Lions, when you see that, there's this thing that rises up inside of us where we go, man, that's a beautiful animal, right? There's a kingliness to this animal, right? There is a beauty, there's a strength, there's a power, there's control, there's a sense of like royalty when you see a lion, right? Interestingly enough, ancient culture saw the lion in the exact same way we do. Lions represent this honor, right? It's this beautiful, elegant animal, right? Dogs, on the other hand, in ancient culture were very different than dogs in our culture. So this is my dog, I'll introduce you, this is Koa. Yeah, Koa is, that's how I feel every morning when I wake up and see her face. My kids get jealous. I think there's more pictures on my phone of her than them, but that's a different story. I'm empty nesting. They've kicked me to the curb. So anyways, so Koa, this is Koa, and this is one of my 2 dogs. The other dog doesn't deserve a picture on a screen like this. She's scary. But this is Koa, and she's beautiful. And some of you, if you've ever seen my other dog, you know that that's true. I noticed this yesterday. So I love Koa. And yesterday, this week, I was interacting with her, and I realized I refer to myself as dad to her, which is really weird when you think about like how much I have like humanitized her. Like I'm dad, and you are like what? My daughter? I don't. And do you know other people that like that's how they interact with their dogs? They talk to their dogs like they're people. They refer to themselves as mom or dad. Oh, go see mom, go see dad, right? And they talk like this. And you're like, at some point, if you stop and see that from the outside, you're like, that's weird. Right? Take it one step further. Next picture. This is Koa and Millie. Millie is Nathan, our worship pastor. That Millie is his dog. Millie is Koa's little sister by 6 months. The reason they're together in this picture is that we have play dates. We schedule play dates for our dog. Like, if you would have told me 10 years ago that my dog would have play dates with other dogs, I would have been like, you're ridiculous. Like dogs, there's no way. And yet this is like, sometimes they just need a play date. And it's not how we know, we just know and they get together and they do this. And so in our culture, we get kind of carried away with the whole dog thing. We don't view dogs the same way. A couple more evidences of this. This is a line I'm not willing to cross. This one here. I don't know under what circumstances you need to do this. Right? This is just kind of weird to me, but I do like it looks very sturdy, whatever that thing is. This next one takes it to a level, my stomach turns on this one. I mean, look at him. He's like, I bet you didn't notice my beagle. I saw this week and I was like, that guy, man card, taken right there. Like the moment he put that thing on, it was like, take his man card, he's done, right? You lost it. And then this one really pushes my buttons. This is like the final straw for me. Guys, this is real. People buy these for their dogs. And like, by the way, if you're one of these people and you're offended, fine, okay? I'm 100% okay with this because here's the deal. When someone says take the dog for a walk, that means the dog should go for a walk, right? Not like, hey, we got a stroller specifically made for a dog, right? Because your dog just wants to see the sights. No, your dog wants to run and play. Stop this, right? Don't even get me started on airplanes, okay, and dogs and the whole thing. The whole point is this. The whole point is that in our culture, dogs have special treatment, right? Like, I mean, when you hear someone say in our culture, better to be a live dog than a lion, you actually go, well, actually being a dog in our culture is way better than being a lion in our day and age, right? You get poached if you're a lion. You get poached eggs if you're a dog in our culture, right? That's the kind of difference, right? To the ancient Hebrews, the dog was not what the dog is today. The dog, there are these stories in ancient history of dogs going into battlefields and ravaging the carcasses of humans. They were scavengers. Dogs were like buzzards. Dogs were despised. They competed for sustenance in a community. They were hated, right? Much like my other dog that doesn't get on the screen today. They were rodents like my other dog. We had an incident last night that involved a garden hose and latex gloves, and I'm not going to go any further, and my other dog. So evidence for dogs being disgusting is my other dog. And that's that other culture, right? So a dog is this disgusting thing. And anytime you see a dog reference in the Bible, just always remember this. A dog, it might as well be saying it's a rat. It's this disgusting creature. When David goes to Goliath and Goliath says, what, you come at me with sticks? Do you think I'm a dog? He's saying, do you think less of me? You think I'm a filthy animal? So this writer, this wisdom teacher says it's better to be a live dog than to be a dead lion. And what he's saying is this. He's saying it's better to be alive. It's better to be breathing than to be respected and honored and dead. Seems to be what he's saying, right? But then you get a little further and you realize he's also doing something else. He's drawing a distinction. He's with almost this razor-sharp precision. He's drawing a line to help us understand a difference in how we understand our lives. He's helping us understand that there are times when we merge these two ideas about what it means to be alive, and when we do, it causes all sorts of pain and suffering in our lives. Like, he goes on in this. Let me just read the next few verses to remind us. Verse 5, he goes, "For the living know that they'll die, but the dead know nothing. And they have no further reward. Even their name is forgotten, their love, their hate, their jealousy, long since have vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. When you're dead, it all goes away. It's all forgotten. It doesn't matter." And what he's trying to do with this whole thing about a lion and the honor and all these different things versus the dog who lives this sort of disgusting life, he's making a point, and the distinction is this. He's saying there is a difference between the things that happen in your life and the fact that you have a life. There's a distinction between the things that happen in your life and the fact that you have a life. There's a difference. We tend to fuse these things together. We tend to associate the circumstances of our life with our life itself. We make them the circumstances. That becomes our life, not our life in itself. And what he's doing in this process of using this metaphor is separating the two. Let me give you an example. I don't know how many of you have followed the kind of Everest disaster that's been happening this year on Mount Everest. Anyone noticing that? Anyone heard about the news stories? Like massive crowds of people, short climbing window, 11 people have perished. I think it's up to 11, maybe even more now. And there's stories emerging of people standing basically in a line to get to the top of the mountain, which just sounds crazy, literally lined up for hours at 23,000 feet. And there's stories of people shoving each other and trying to get to the top so they can take their photo and then hurry back down and hope not to die, right? And I'm like reading these stories, and by the way, I've been on top of a few mountains with glaciers and snow at the top. And in fact, a few weeks I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with World Vision, doing that. And let me just tell you this. When you get to the top of a mountain, there is this incredible letdown. Because you get up there and there's no trees, there's no rivers flowing, there's just snow and ice. And you can stand there, and if you've made it about this summit, if that's what it's about, it's an incredible letdown. It is not about that. The whole process, the beauty of climbing a mountain is not about getting to this one particular point. It's the journey from the bottom to the top, the people that you're with, the experience that you have, the hardship you endure, and then the process of getting back down on your own 2 feet. That is an amazing thing. It is this journey. But if you substitute, if you make it all about this thing, you lose perspective and you do disgusting things to other human beings at the top of the world's tallest mountain. That's what happens. And it's really easy for us to stand back with a critical eye and say, yeah, you know what, you're right, that is ridiculous. The problem is we do the exact same thing in every other category in our life. Like education, we make it about the wrong thing. I mean, how many of us at some point or another, we quit learning and we tried to get grades because we knew the GPA is the most important thing. Forget about learning, I just had to get the grade because let me just tell you this. I'm going to ruin it for some parents right now because your kids are going to quote me. But after high school or college, when was the last time somebody ever asked you your GPA? Like, when were you at a party, you're some mixer after work, and somebody goes, hey, what was your GPA in college? It doesn't happen, right? No one ever asks you that question. It doesn't matter, right? It does not matter. Things, to an extent, asterisk, kids, talk to your parents about that. They'll tell you why it matters. College scholarships, that's why it matters. But you know what I'm saying? We make it the wrong thing. We do the same thing with our careers. It's all about this achievement, this next thing. Can I climb the next rung of the ladder? An opportunity that comes, a promotion that comes. Or if it doesn't come, if it doesn't happen, if the career doesn't pan out, same thing. We make it about that thing. We make it about the wrong thing. We do this with our kids. We think if our kids turn out good, that means I was a good parent. But if my kids turn out bad, it means I was a bad parent. We do this. We put this weight on ourselves. What the writer seems to be saying here is, you may not have the life that you expected, but you have life. Like, quit looking at the circumstances and embrace the reality that you have life. Man, let me have you think about this for a moment. Did Jesus anywhere say that I have come to make all of your wildest dreams come true? That was actually Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite. See? Jesus actually looks at a group of people like us, his disciples, and what he says to us is, you're going to have trouble in this life. You're going to experience hardship. And what's also strange is to that same group of people, he also said, I have come that you would have life and that you would have life abundantly. Which then raises a question that we all have to wrestle with, and it's this. Can you have a full, abundant life and still have trouble? Right? How is it possible to have an abundant life if you don't have enough to pay your bills? How's it possible to have an abundant life if you don't get into the school you want? Or how's it possible to have an abundant life if you get into this career, this job, and it's the one that does pay the bills, but it turns out that it's mundane, there's no meaning in it, and it's boring, and week after week you say, why do I go there? Is it possible to have an abundant life if work is boring? Is it possible if things come your direction, if there are circumstances that take place in your life and they derail your dream of what your life would be, is it possible to have an abundant life? And the answer, obviously, is yes. And it's yes when you make the distinction between the things that happen in your life and your life itself. When you draw that line, when you cut on that razor's edge and you say, I am not defined by the circumstances of my life, good or bad, that's when you actually begin to enter into abundance. That's when you begin to become alive. When you say to yourself, good or bad, my circumstances do not define me, which means I can be living like a dog, but I have life. And that's better than being a lion and being dead, right? So there's this question that I think reveals how hard this is for us to distinguish. Oftentimes when we see somebody we haven't seen for a while, we walk up to them, we use this question, we go, hey, how's life? And usually what we do is we then answer by only telling them about the good circumstances in our life, right? Oh, life's good, man. Just depending on the relationship, we usually just stay shallow and we tell them all the good circumstances. But if you're the writer of Ecclesiastes and someone comes up to you and they say, how's life? Your answer is what? Pretty amazing, isn't it? Because this collection of dust has somehow been formed in such a way that oxygen is going in and oxygen is going out and blood is pumping through my veins, and I have the ability to just live whether my circumstances are good or bad. Life is good. Amen? Like, you're alive. I know your circumstances might not be what you wanted them to be, but the fact that you are alive is this gift, and when you realize this, your eyes are opened to new truths. All of this shifts our understanding of Ecclesiastes. If you look at the book of Ecclesiastes, and so far in this series, you're like, man, this is really dark and negative. Well, part of it is. But if that's all you're getting, and as much as we joke about it, the truth is you're missing the point if that's all you see. I just want to show you this. This is kind of a fun exercise I've done in the services this morning. At least it's fun for me, and probably like mildly fun for you. But check this out. Verses 7 to 10, just listen to him again. The last part of this, after these conclusions about if you're alive, then, man, you're alive, right? If you're alive, then that's a gift. Then he says this, go and eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God's already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife whom you love, all the days of this temporary life that God has given you under the sun, all your temporary days. For this is your lot in life and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you're going, there is neither working nor planning nor knowledge nor wisdom. Now you hear that and you go, well, that could be really negative. But do you see the opposite of what he's saying in this? Look at the text again with these certain words highlighted. When you wake up to the gift that your life is not defined by circumstances, this is the gift he's telling you you'll be given. You will have gladness. There will be this joy that enters into your circumstances. When you begin to see this, the mundane suddenly begins to fill with life. There's things that happen, right? You'll realize that God has already approved of you. Just the reality, think about this. The reality that God has given you breath and that you get to breathe in and breathe out, that in itself is a deep sense of God's approval over you. How much time do you and I spend trying to seek the approval of other people? Imagine waking up to a moment when it went away. It was short. Talk about temporary, right? But imagine understanding that life, you are approved in your life, that you get to enjoy life, that you experience love, that there's this idea of working. I know sometimes some of us go, man, work really is lame, but no, think about just the joy of sometimes you work with your hands. This week, my wife and I, we worked in our yard with our hands together. There was just moments where, like, even that is a gift, right? Planning, knowledge, wisdom, these are yours. These are the gifts given to the person who wakes up to the reality that my life is not defined by the circumstances of my life. There's a difference between what happens to you and the fact that you're breathing. And all of this works together. All of these things are taking place so that we become more aware. Because what the Bible is constantly trying to remind us of, the more aware you are, the more alive you are. The more aware you become, the more alive you become. Which means this, it is possible for you and I to move through our lives and all we're doing is going through the motions. We're not actually alive. But when your eyes are opened and you suddenly see, man, this moment in front of me, this is the only thing that matters. Like, this is the value, this is the beauty, this is the good, this is the joy. When you start to see this, you become aware and you come to life. Life comes to life in those moments. Something changes. One more thing, back to bitahon, back to this idea of hope. I mentioned in the New Testament that the word hope is used over and over and over again. But the New Testament is also defined by a radical event that should absolutely, if the writer of Ecclesiastes hasn't convinced us to focus on the moment that's in front of us, then this will. In fact, this week I was teaching our Summit Leadership Collective. There's 25 young men and women who are engaged in our leadership collective this summer. And I was teaching them this week. I had 4 sessions where I sat with them, kind of a small group study type of thing. And I was going through this crazy passage in John chapter 20 that I've taught before on a Sunday morning, I think in the past year. And there's this crazy story where Jesus is meeting with his disciples and he breathes on his disciples. And it's always this really weird thing, you know, Jesus breathing on his disciples, like blowing his hot air on them. And so I read the passage and I'm going to ask a question. The question is, does anyone notice anything strange about this story? And so I said that. And I'm hoping the answer is going to be, yeah, Jesus breathing on his disciples. And one of the participants, she pipes up and she goes, yeah, that a dead guy just walked in the door. And we all kind of laughed, and I was like, wait, you're right. That's way more weird than him breathing on people is the fact that he walked in the door, right? But there's this moment where you have to recognize what we sang about this morning and what we celebrate as Christ followers is the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that Jesus went to a cross, died for us, and then overcame death. If death has been overcome, then what kind of freedom does that deliver to us right here, right now? If the reality of the resurrection is true, that should give us bitahon. That should give us certainty. That should give us a hope that allows us to live in the now in a way we never dreamed we could. Amen? Would you guys stand with me? May all of those things that make you forget the moment, may all those worries, may all of those regrets, may all of those concerns, may all of those distractions be put in their place by the beauty of the resurrection and the hope of Jesus Christ. In his name, amen. Amen. Next week's our last week in this series. Some of you, that's a good thing. Some of you, that's a bad thing. If you want to pray with somebody this morning, there's folks down front available to pray with. Be sure to talk to the This Mission guys. They would love to meet you. Talk to those guys, and we will see you guys next Sunday. See you later.